Hello everyone, my name is Sunny and I did a quick showcase of my automatic brewing station a couple of days ago now, and from that I got some feedback asking to do a more in-depth view. So that's what we're going to be doing today. As a reminder of what the system does, or for those of you who didn't watch my original video, this system automatically brews your potions based on what effects you select and which potion you give the system. So for example, I could do a splash potion of fire resistance, just like so. One item equals 3 potions. That's how many can be brewed in a brewing stand. And you can choose whether it comes to you in item form or in a shulker box, in case you want, a bulk amount of certain ones. You can pop it in a shulker box. On your right, you have the bottles and the place input. The bottles get automatically refilled, so you should just have to keep an eye on those. But you will need to keep a better eye on the blaze powder, as that obviously doesn't get automatically refilled. The overflow chest is if you request too many potions. So this system allows you to request up to 27 potions, or 9 items from here. And if you request 10 items or 30, I suppose, potions, the ingredients for that 10th potion that you requested will end up in this overflow chest, just to make sure that the system doesn't get backed up. As you can see, we have a loading bar here letting you know that the system is running, and once the system is finished, you should hear a little sound. Just like that, and that means that your potions are finished and ready for you to take and do with what you will. I'm going to now kind of describe how the system works. I thought the best way to do this is by explaining kind of the system journey, in order that it takes from the moment that you throw a item into the input, or the journey that it takes to become a potion. I thought that would be the easiest way to explain it, as well as the components within that journey. So yeah, also just wanted to let you guys know that there is a download for both the world and the schematic in the description. Since my last video, I have made slight changes to the design. The design still works exactly the same, will be just as efficient. This is just, I noticed that we could save a couple of components here and there, like an observer or two, or a piece of redstone, or a block or two, So I was just trying to make it less resource intensive, although it didn't really make much of an effect, but it's there anyway. So yeah, all down in the description. Before we start, I wanted to go through a couple of FAQs, or a couple of the reasons why I built the system and why it works the way it does. So me as a designer, I don't build for efficiency. I design a system because it's fun. I just kind of enjoy the process of designing a system. It could probably be improved. I'm not a redstone genius or anything like that, and if you do have improvements, or you spot where it can be improved, please let me know in the comment section below. I'll be really interested to know your thoughts on that. And this is a end game system, so it's designed to help players be lazy, basically. Obviously most people probably won't brew that many potions in a standard, single player world or multiplayer, because you don't play for that long. But for those more hardcore players, this might be a system that they find a little bit more fun and nice to use. In terms of rules for the system, so you, like I said before, you can request a maximum of 9 different potions. Minus weakness, that is because that's got a separate input to the others. So technically you could request as many weakness potions as you want, but you'll come to understand that as we move along. The system will break if you request a potion that isn't possible. For example, you cannot add a glowstone to a health potion, or you try and So there's a few potions basically that you can't make level 2. So that's where the system can break, and it will mean that you need to go into the system and take out any items that it's trying to brew. That is not possible. And you will need to keep an eye on the ingredients if they run out. So obviously all the ingredients are in a dropper, which you will need to keep an eye on to make sure that you have sufficient ingredients to be able to brew those potions. The system will not tell you when you've run out, though that is an add-on that we could look to add in the future. I like to split out my different circuits into different wall colors. This just helps with diagnosing if there's any issues. So when you build this, you won't necessarily need to do this, but for ease of understanding, I think this could be helpful. So let's start with the input. So let's start where all systems starts, and that is the input. So it is a dropped key item input. These are keys in here, so that means I input by dropping one of them into it, and as you can see, that will start the system, and you see it fire out there, and that's how we tell the system what potion we want. So due to how brewing stations work, we have to split the weakness potions out from the rest. So here we have a item filter for that, just a basic item filter like how you would normally do it. And this is due to how weakness potions are brewed. They don't start with a nether wart, instead they start with a fermented spider eye. All the other ones, they start with a nether wart, so they go to the main brewing bit, and we'll get to the weakness potion bit later on. So if an item is in the dropper, it will set off the hopper timer. We need the timer to make sure the item input is regulated to avoid the system moving too fast, which ultimately will break how the ingredients are sent to the brewing stations, because they need to be sent in a specific order. Weakness potions require its own timer, which is down here. That's because there is only one brewing station for this potion, so instead of timing it against the ingredients, we need to time it versus brewing a full weakness potion. And that's, we got to take into account if you add all the effects to it as well, which you can do. They will first go into this bottom dropper here. This is the weakness potions. The weakness potions go into this first bottom dropper here, which will set off this timer. This timer, once it's ready, will then shoot up this dropper elevator into the top one, which will then set off this timer too. Some of the extra wiring you see here ensures that the hopper timers stop correctly. I was running into issues with a few items ending up on the other hopper. So, for example, the system would end with 1 or 2 items in this hopper here, and I wanted to make sure that there was exactly, so it's the same timing. The timing is always correct. There's never any leeway really. So yeah, and that is the input. Next we have the blue circuit, which is the item filter. So it is a basic item filter. It's just reading the comparator is reading from these hoppers along here through the ice block, which ultimately then, when something fits it, so if I break this one for example, it'll move along until it finds the hopper that it can go into, which will go into the output into the rest of the system. This is an easy way to be able to use a key item input. One little trick here is make sure that you have your filter item also in the one below. So you'll have it at the top with 18 of your filter item and one in all the other slots, and then your key item, but you also need one at the bottom as well. Some people might miss that one, so I wanted to point that out. The yellow circuit is the item return and potion selector. So this part of the system returns the key item to the request chest via this channel here, as well as it sets off these pistons, which will then determine which potion is selected via these observers. So the way that it works is once it goes through the item filter, it will go into these droppers, which will unpower this redstone torch, which will move this nugget into this hopper for one tick and then back into the other. Whilst it does that, so if I, for example, put something in here, you can see it turns off. It will pull up the observer and pull it back down, and when it pulls it back down, it will send a redstone pulse into this wall block, and so on and so forth, all the way down. At the same time, it also, when the iron nugget gets put into this here, it will put a signal into the comparator, which will power this block, which will drop the item into the water stream, like so. The green circuit is the water bottle refill circuit. So when a potion is requested, it will send a signal to this observer clock here, which will send exactly 3 pulses into this dispenser, which will fill up with water and go across this water stream into the chest. The system relies on keeping a healthy constant flow of water bottles and blaze powder. This is probably the biggest downfall of the system, I think. Water bottles are easy enough to get, but getting a lot of blaze powder can be a little tricky. I would think if you're building this system, you already have a good steady flow of blaze powder. There are plenty of blaze farm designs out there which you can follow. Logical Geek Boy's latest blaze powder farm looks really fun. It's from a single player world, but there are plenty more out there that you could follow. Each hopper along the bottle and blaze hopper line, so this long here, you need to be laid out exactly like this, with 4 water bottles, then a stack of blaze powder. So you've got to make sure that it's in this order. The blaze powder needs to be in the last slot, as hoppers prioritize refilling from the first slot. So if they aren't in the last slot, then the system will break due to it not being able to pass through water bottles. Instead, the hopper would just fill up with blaze powder, basically. So that's how you need to set up those hoppers. That will obviously, it comes down here and then it moves along. When we go forward, you'll see what I mean, along the potion brewing line. The effect selector is very simple. It's the orange circuit here. It uses powered rails and observer lines to send a signal to a honey block and slime block line, I guess is the best way to put it. Just as I select, you can see the honey block and the slime blocks can move forward. And what this is doing is this places a block above the observer, next to the dropper, which will allow a signal to pass through it. If there's no block, so if I unselect these two, you can see there's no block here, which means when this observer powers, nothing's going to happen because there's no block there to take the power to move it into the dropper. To make a lingering potion, you first need to make it a splash potion. So when the lingering line gets a signal, it will also send it to the gunpowder line via this little section here to make sure that these both are being powered. And these two here, as you can see, are the gunpowder and the dragon's breath line. I actually didn't know that about lingering potions, that you need to make them splash before lingering, but you learn something new every day. This little section here, just make sure that if the furthest rail gets powered, it sends a steady signal all the way to the droppers. You can only power up to 9 rails, so it needs this section, otherwise it wouldn't reach all the way. So yeah, the binary ingredient selector is a section that I'm most scared about explaining, just because I can get a little bit rambly when I'm explaining it, but I promise you it is easier than it looks. Ultimately, this system here, this component tells the system what ingredients it needs and in what order. The best way I can explain it is where you see a glass block along here, where you see glass blocks, this equals 0. Where you see an observer, this equals 1. So what we're doing is, or it represents 1. Each potion has a code. Okay, so this code then activates the corresponding ingredients, which are in these droppers along here. And the droppers are in order of the potion recipe. So if you look in here, we've got all these different ingredients here, but near the end, right at the end, we have like the nether wart, because it's the last thing that's going to go into the system, and all the effects, because that obviously comes after making the potion. I guess a good way to show you this if I, for example, let's ask for a swiftness potion, okay? Let's ask for a lingering swiftness potion. I've set up the blocks over there so that they can bring power through it. So swiftness is the cyan line here. If I take it out and put it in, you can see, well, you probably missed it, but it did send a signal through these powered rails. And if we find where sugar is, let's find sugar. Sugar is this line here. And we go across to the cyan line, which is this here. You can see there's an observer under this. So this is telling the system, I need sugar, because I need to create a swiftness potion. This will then go across the hopper line here into the item elevator. Across, and as you can see, if I open this hopper, we've got the sugar in there, glowstone, gunpowder, dragon's breath to make it lingering, and then it ends in the nether wart. And this obviously leads into the brewing station. The other thing I need to mention that there are 2 fermented spider eye droppers. This is due to the weakness potion needing to finish with a fermented spider eye. Otherwise, the effect ingredients would come after. So what I mean by that is, to get slowness, for example, you make a speed potion and then you give it fermented spider eye. So we need it here to be able to do all the bad juju. So you can make a damage one by putting a fermented spider eye with the glistening melon, or you can make an invisibility by putting it with a golden carrot. So we needed that one there, but we did also need for the weakness one at the end, because we need to make sure that one comes after these effects for when we get to the weakness. So that's why there is 2 of them. Speaking of weakness potion, let's have a look at the weakness potion brewing station. So it triggers from the binary selector here. Let's do that, as that represents the binary selector. There is a long delay to give the droppers time to activate and for the items to pass through the item elevator. A piston enables the hopper with just enough time to receive all of its items before locking again, allowing normal potions to pass over it and pass through. And that's pretty much how it works. So the purple line is the brewing stations. The brewing stations themselves rely on having a nether wart, or in the weakness potions case, a fermented spider eye, pre-placed inside of the brewing stand. The hopper above the brewing stand has a filter of 22 items. So when one more item goes inside of it, this will give it a higher signal strength, which turns off the torch, allowing bottles of water to go inside of it. It also at the same time will power this repeater, stopping anything from being able to leave it. So once these have brewed, this will unpower and the items will go inside of the hopper into the output. At the same time, it has this line across here. We use this line to send a signal to the brewing detection circuit. When this line is unpowered, it sends a signal to the sequencer to reset it, just like that. And as you can see, if I go over here, you will see there is 3 bottles of potion of swiftness, easy for me to say, as well as another wart back in pre-placed. One of the more fun circuits in the build is this sequencer. So I needed a way to lock the hoppers in a specific order to make sure that potions and ingredients don't get mixed up. So anytime a potion is requested, the sequencer gets a signal from the binary selector, which is represented over here. For now, I'll just use this button to represent it. This circuit only allows one sand to stay up at a time. So if I press it, one sand stays up. Which we can then pull a pulse through that system. If I pull it again, you'll see we can then pull a signal through this sand, which will then power this piston line and lock the hopper here to make sure that it can pass over it and move on to the next. And this is a sequencer all the way, so if I keep pressing it, you can see it'll only do one at a time. And then if all the hoppers are locked, you can see it will go into the overflow chest here, because this hopper and this hopper will be locked, and it will go into the overflow chest. When the system needs to be reset, as we said, this line here will be connected to this. Once it's finished, it sends a signal to this block, which just resets all of them. The cyan circuit is the brewing detection circuit. It's the most ugliest circuit. It's the least sexy circuit, but it is one of the most important. So the reason the system needs a brewing detection circuit is for two reasons. It connects the system to the running circuit over there, the pink one. But it also stops the shulker loader from sending the shulker until all potions are brewed. It connects to both the weakness brewing station and the regular brewing station over here. So no matter if you're brewing one or the other or both at the same time, it's letting the system know that something is being brewed, so don't send anything. The reasoning for the long delay and all of the repeaters is just to give the system adequate time for the potions to go through the output and into the shulker box to make sure that it doesn't break it before all the potions are inside of the shulker box. The way that it detects how the different systems are brewing is slightly different. For the weakness potion, it does it by reading the double signal of the hoppers that are connected to the filters on the weakness side, and on the regular brewing, it does this via an observer line into a copper bulb. And then when it comes back, it will update the system, and when this has one less, it will also update the system there. So then once everything is unpowered, it sends a signal into this observer, which lets the shulker box and the output know that it's finished. The output, which is the red line, is fairly straightforward. Once it has finished brewing, it will go into these droppers, which automatically detect that something is in there. If I chuck, for example, 3 of these in there, you can see it's send them all off, and they'll come up through the system into the red line and into the output chest. 2, 3, there they are. The way that it does this is by just a simple comparator clock that faces into itself. And the same with the weakness one. This is the weakness potion over here, into a small item elevator, into the hoppers, which go into this dropper, and we basically have the same system that we have for these droppers for this dropper too, and instead it pushes it up into this one along the water stream into the output chest. The only thing to note here is the water streams could potentially be a little tricky. So the way that I did it to make it so you didn't have to keep going down every 7 blocks is 2 signs either side with 2 slabs. This allows items to pass under it. A water source block above the slab here, and a water source block inside of this slab here, so that the water is always flowing, and if something falls onto it, it will move on to the next, and so on and so forth. The magenta line is the shulker selector and loader, so you can select it by pressing this button here, and that will send a signal which will push this slime block line down, which will push the redstone block down, which enables the hopper to receive items. This is possible because hopper behavior prioritizes going down before going across like it would here. The loading system is fairly simple. Once the shulker has detected it has items inside of it, this piston will extend, and then once the brewing detection has finished being powered, it will send a signal down, which will break the shulker box, and it will go into this hopper and into the output stream, as well as use this dispenser above here to place a new one down. I have also attached a shulker box crafter to make sure to keep the system plentiful of shulkers. This could also just be a chest full of shulker boxes if you wanted to do it that way. The way that the auto crafter works is when this hopper here no longer has a shulker box in it, it will send 2 pulses into the crafter, which will put 2 more boxes in its place, and above these it gets full of chests and shulker shells. The crying obsidian isn't really necessary, it's more of a precaution, but this block can be any non-movable block like a furnace or regular obsidian. I just use crying obsidian to be different, I guess. The last circuit we're going to be looking at is the system running circuit, the pink circuit. This circuit isn't really necessary for the machine to work. It's more of a nice to have. The reason for this circuit is the loading / buffer bar, whatever you want to call it, to let you know that it's system running, as well as the notification sound that you hear when it has finished brewing. It first gets a signal from the input circuit. Then shortly after, it will get a signal from the binary selector by pushing this redstone block here, which will give a constant signal. And lastly, it will get its signal from the brewing detection circuit, which will turn on this copper bulb and send a signal through, and at the same time push this block across, so that it doesn't keep pushing it across every single. If you request more than one potion, obviously it will just keep pushing it across. So this stops that from happening, and it puts the buffer signal. And then once this has been disabled, this observer will come down and send a signal into the note blocks, so you get your notification sound. All those inputs power this pulse extender, which makes sure that this sticky piston stays powered for the correct amount of time, as well as this sticky piston. The loading / buffer bar is powered by a simple observer clock. As you can see here, these observers down here go round in a circle, and these are all facing up into a block, which you put a redstone lamp above, and that will just give it that circular look, which is a funky look. I needed to trigger this at different stages. Otherwise, the light wouldn't come on until brewing detection, which we all know that comes on basically last. So I needed to make sure that it came on from the moment that you put something in, hence why it starts with the input. Next, it's the binary, which gives it a more constant power, because you couldn't get a constant power from the input. And then obviously the brewing detection circuit does the final one. And that's a nice way as well to be able to detect when it's finished, is because it will send a signal because the brewing detection is turned off. And that's it. That's all the components and the different circuits within the system. Hopefully I explained it a little bit better for you, to understand how it works and why it works. Let me know in the comments if you have any more questions, or how you think I could do this better in the future. Like I said at the beginning of the video, the downloads are in the description. And make sure you subscribe as well. I'll have more things coming soon, hopefully. I've got a few things working in the background. And yeah, have a good day, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.